I recently saw a TikTok by Arlene Dickinson who shared that she was 49 when she was first asked to join Dragon's Den. She thought that she was too old and past her prime to be on TV. Fast forward, because at 66, Arlene just wrapped season 18 and wanted women to know that how we saw our age, it was all down to our mindset. My question for you is, where have you been holding yourself back and using age as a reason to not even try? My guest today is Debbie Weiss, who is on a mission to ensure that women in midlife know that life can begin at 50. Before we get started, could I ask you a favor? Would you be able to subscribe to the roller coaster of midlife? And if you're feeling really generous, leave me a review. This lets the podcast platforms know that this is a show worth listening to. The icing on the cake would be if you could also share this podcast with your friends. Our greatest strength comes in the community that we are growing. Now buckle up. This is going to be a fun ride. This is the Roller Coaster Podcast. We are here to help you be empowered and renew your sense of purpose as a midlife mom. This is your time to redefine and reclaim your power as a woman. Just because our kids are getting older doesn't mean that our lives still don't have crazy twists, turns, ups and downs. And that's not to mention what our hormones are doing. We're navigating helping our kids plan their next chapters while quietly wondering, what the heck does my next chapter look like? My name is Lucy Q, wife, mom, podcaster, and journaling mentor. This is a crazy time in your life, but you are not alone. So I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
This is the Roller Coaster of Midlife, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. My guest today is none other than the incredible Debbie Weiss, a seasoned life strategist with an abundance of rich, hands-on experience. Debbie has turned life's most challenging twists and turns into a ride filled with hope, inspiration, and relentless resilience. As the author of On Second Thought, Maybe I Can, and a contributing author in the heartfelt book, Heart Whispers, Debbie has painted powerful narratives that uplift and inspire. Her words are not just sentences. They're stepping stones guiding you to the peak of your potential. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction. I love the use of the word seasoned.
Yeah. Well, it's about how do we acknowledge our wealth of wisdom.
Exactly.
Without saying, hey, I've been kicking around on this on this planet for decades.
Oh, that's terrific. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'd like to start, if you could maybe share a bit about who you are and your journey to writing On Second Thought.
Sure. So I want to say I'm a regular person who had no aspirations of any of this, becoming an author, becoming a podcast guest or a podcaster, nothing. I was, I had a career, I had my kids, I had my family, just kind of on that hamster wheel and, dealing with a lot of different circumstances. We all have different challenges in our lives, right, that come up, but I had spent the first 50 years feeling like I was a victim of my circumstances. And turning 50 did something to me. It wasn't, the day of my birthday. It wasn't an aha moment, but it made me really reflect and say, boy, okay, is this how my life is just going to continue for the next however many years? I don't want to get to the end of my life and be that person that looks back and regrets that they never stopped and did anything for themselves, because I was always doing everything for everyone else from the time that I was 17, where I became my father's caregiver for 30 years. So it was a lifelong journey. And kind of since that aha moment, I'm now approaching 60. And so I'd say for the past decade, I've been on a transformational journey that now turned into becoming an author.
There's so much in your story that I can relate to. That victim of her circumstances. That one really, really hit home for me, because that's exactly where I was at 44. And it's what drove me to rock bottom. Also, the feeling like you're doing everything for everybody else and never finding that time for yourself. I think those are two things that as women, we're really good at.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just talking to a friend yesterday, and she was describing the life that I used to have and how I felt. And she just said, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. And then I just drop into bed and say, now I got to get up tomorrow and do it again. She said, I just want to run away. But of course, you're not going to run away. I mean, I guess some people do, but she wasn't going to run away. But it's just that feeling. And when you learn that your circumstances, we all have circumstances, I could tell you, and my book is a laundry list of my circumstances. Oh, woe was me, till I stopped and realized, hello, everyone has their own set of circumstances. Yes, some people's are worse than others. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because I'm the one making the choices to be a victim instead of taking those circumstances and seeing really that they've created the person I am today and doing something positive with it. So, yeah, the victim mentality for me, and that's change of mindset literally changed my life.
And in that moment that you realize that it's all a choice, I think that's the beginning point of change. Can you maybe share what you went through after that, or how things evolved for you to, let's say, meet the full transformation?
Well, still transforming, right? I don't know where it's going to lead me. I have no idea. If I look back a year ago, and I was actually thinking of this morning, if I look back a year ago at this time, I had still not decided that I was going to write a book. And this is going to add another layer, but probably it's been almost exactly a year that my husband was diagnosed with terminal blood cancer. And so things happened simultaneously. I wound up deciding to write the book. Again, I had so many feelings of, I can't do this, and all of the things. And I did it while I was taking care of him. He passed away on December 30th. And my first draft was due to my editor January 14th. And I wasn't prepared by December 30th, but I was close, and they offered to extend the deadline. And I said, nope, I'm doing it. And I'm finishing, I'm following through with my goal. And I did achieve that. Thinking back, that's kind of, I can't believe that me at 50 would have done that. I would have said, here's the king of all circumstances, right? My husband's dying, and I think this is a good idea to now embark on some new journey that I know nothing about. I would never, ever have done that. And I think that's really the pinnacle, that I did not let this particular circumstance alter still having something for myself.
Doesn't that come down to sort of that hope of, that hope that we have for our future? I think that's something that's gotten me through some challenging times for myself, is that when you have those things that are powerfully part of who you are, that purpose, that passion, those are those things that it's like dangling a carrot in front of a horse. It keeps moving forward because you can see it. There's something else greater than yourself. And that's what sort of keeps you moving forward. Do you find that maybe your book was like that for you?
Absolutely. And the difference is I didn't know what my carrot was, right? I didn't feel a purpose or a passion before because I never gave myself time to explore that. That my book is called On Second Thought Maybe I Can, because all I said was I can't. Oh, I can't do that. I have to take care of so and so. Oh, I don't know how to do that. I'm never going to learn that. Every single thing out of my mouth was a reason, an excuse why I can't do something. And when I did change that, that's when the carrots started being dangled. And yes, it gave me, it gave me something of my own during a time where I was giving everything else I had to him and my kids.
Now, I can't, it's something I keep coming back to is why we seem so quick to stop ourselves.
Mhm.
You're a mom, you have kids. If one of your kids were to come to you and say, I want to write a book, would your first response say, no, you can't do that?
Of course not. You can do
And
anything, right?
and
That's what
isn't
you tell them.
and it's, I think I was journaling about this. It was either this morning or yesterday. It was, why is it that we're so hard on ourselves? That we speak to ourselves and treat ourselves in such a way that we would never do to our children, our friends, or any loved one.
I know. It is amazing. And the hardest part to change that is realizing that you're doing it, right? All of these things, I think all starts with awareness. I felt like, again, for at least 50 years, I was living in the dark. I didn't know there was another way. I didn't realize that I was really the cause of the life that I had created, that it was just a mindset shift that can change everything. You still have the circumstances. They're not going away. Again, that's the game of life, but it's all how you view them and how you respond to them.
Right.
I remember one of the darkest days of my life, the day I hit rock bottom. When I went searching for answers on how to get myself out of that dark place, I discovered journaling. But when I tried to put pen to paper, I didn't know where to start. I had no guide or method to help me express what I was feeling. The only thing that I had was the blank page of my journal staring back at me. It took me years to figure out the proper journaling method so that I could understand who I was, what I wanted, how I thought, and how I felt. That is why I've taken everything that I've learned and turned it into a guide that will not only help you start your journaling journey, but will also help you start each day with purpose and gratitude. This guide is filled with growth tools, personal resources, and guided journal entries that will help you understand who you are, what you want, what you're thinking, and what you're feeling. You can find your journaling journey, your guide to starting each day with purpose and gratitude, on Amazon, and check out the show notes for links. Order your journaling journey today and discover your true self.
Right.
And when you look back,
Mm.
do you wish you had done things differently?
I mean, I think all of us can find things, right, that we wished we had done things differently, but no, because I say that it is the series of those choices, decisions that got me here today. Again, I would never have believed that this is where I would be at this stage of my life. It wasn't even in my wildest fantasy. And I wouldn't have all the life experience. And so I wouldn't be the person I am. So no, I try no point in regrets. It's a waste of time.
I'm the same way as, I tell my kids, when you know better, you do better.
Yep.
And all
Right.
you're doing is the best you can in the moment. And as soon as you know how to do differently, then you do differently. But until then, this is your journey. And I look at it the same way, is that, yeah, I spent, the better part of 45 years of my life wrapped in things like, victimhood, limiting beliefs, problems with your inner child, inner critic, all of those things.
Yes.
And I think, that's part of the beauty of when you hit a midlife point. And that's kind of when you sit there and say, okay, enough of this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, I'm done with this. And I'm not saying that I still don't, because I know you've got a lot of videos on TikTok, and I'm trying to find my way there. I love your videos, by the way.
Thank you.
And sure, before you hit record or you come up with an idea, you think, I always relate it back to, going in high school, walking into the cafeteria and like looking around, who am I going to sit with?
Yeah, oh yeah.
You kind of have that, oh God, feeling. But there's also a part of me that's like, well, if not now, then when?
Exactly. And if you don't like it, don't watch.
It's like, if it makes somebody laugh or they make fun of it, they stitch or do edit. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Just the other day, I've always struggled with my weight. That's a big part of the book. And the other night, in my bathroom, getting ready for go in the shower or something, and I look in the mirror and I have a negative thought. And I was like, I had a whole, talk with myself. Really? Really? Is this what is important? Like, does it really matter? What are you doing? Like, but in the past, I wouldn't have noticed those negative thoughts that I was having.
Yeah.
And so I was able to squash them and say, get out of here, negative Nelly. I don't need you.
Now, what sort of topics do you touch on in your book? Do you share any steps or advice for women?
I struggled with that when determining what type of book I wanted to write. I didn't really understand the difference between a memoir, an autobiography, a self-help book. And I did in the end decide that for now, no, there are no specific steps. I'm thinking, that might be book number 2. But instead, I just wanted people to be inspired by my story. And quite honestly, I felt like my circumstances, my little traumas are, who cares? I thought people would only care if, God forbid, I fell off a mountain and I was forever in a wheelchair and something traumatic. I was sexually abused. Like, thank goodness none of those things happened to me. And then I realized, but for the majority of us, that's how it works. So it's relatable. So I touch a lot on my weight because that had a lot to do with my childhood and developing those limiting beliefs of lack of self-esteem, unworthiness, insecurity, all of those things. So I have stories explaining how and why I developed those feelings. And then, I've had infertility struggles. My son was diagnosed at a young age on the autistic spectrum. Miscarriage, caregiving. Obviously, my husband's he had a long history of mental and physical issues. So all of that. And then, other struggles, like I moved and started an insurance agency after I had another career for 10 years. So it's a money struggle. Like, it's a little bit of everything, but, it doesn't matter what your own stuff is. It's just the fact that we all have it and it's our choice. And so the last part of the book talks about these stories of transformation.
And I think, in your story, what I sort of pulled out of it is that you were struggling with self-love.
For sure. I think I wonder, is that why I was always a people pleaser and afraid to say no, and volunteering for 32 different organizations at a time and taking care of everyone? Because that was my worth, right? And that had, people loved me because, oh, look what Debbie does. She does it all. She takes care of everyone. She's always helping other people. And, not that I still am not that person who wants to help other people, because honestly, that's the whole goal behind what I'm doing, but it's different. I don't need that. the journey and how I'm evolving makes me, say, hey, good job. You don't need anybody else.
And that's it, is that, I think part of this transformation that we go through is understanding that we're not looking for that external reward, gratification, that has to come from within ourselves. Because I used to be like that. I used to volunteer for different things and community organizations. I created a community nonprofit. And sure, everybody loved me. They thought I was doing great stuff, and they, good for you. But then somebody started a nasty rumor, and it turned so quickly. And that's the thing. That was a hard lesson to understand, was that they loved you as long as you were doing something for them.
Mm.
But as soon as you stop, all those so-called friends, they all disappear. And, it's a tough lesson to learn, but like yourself, what I'm doing, I am giving in a way that fulfills me, and it's for me.
Exactly.
But I don't necessarily, sure, it's great, for, to see people listening to your podcast and watching your videos and stuff like that, because it means you're on the right track. You're sharing something important, but I don't do it for those reasons. Most of the time I get off of recording a podcast episode, and I don't know if you're like this, but you just feel so incredibly full.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's amazing. And just the fact that, like, this is my life. I get to meet someone, right, that I never met before, have wonderful conversations, make connections. Like I still feel like I'm living in the Jetsons, that I can't believe I'm sitting here in my house in New Jersey and I'm able to see you through a screen. I don't know. It just still amazes me, but it's so cool.
But before we hit record, we were going on about, we were talking about how AI is evolving things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I remember when computers came on board. And you're like, I remember when faxes came on board. It's true, is, there are so many powerful ways for us to connect now. And I think that's really helping open up these conversations around midlife, because I think that's the number one problem with navigating midlife and all of its challenges, is that, like in sex ed, when we were kids, you were taught about a period and you were kind of taught about sex and birth control. That was it.
Yep.
Nothing else, nothing emotional or psychological was taught to you, why you were feeling this way, or this is the reason why you're feeling this way. It's the exact same thing with menopause. And I actually heard somebody refer to it as just sort of like the second puberty. It's just in reverse. And they talk about hot flashes and night sweats, and you stop your period. But they do not talk about the emotional shitstorm that your brain goes through.
And some of the other symptoms, like my infertility problem actually was caused because I had rotten eggs, because they were prematurely old. So I went through menopause at a young age. So I had my first hot flash, I think, like at 39 years old. But I remember at 39, all of a sudden I started developing, I had pimples all over. I started getting urinary tract infections. And funny that you should say about another puberty, because I come to find out that those are symptoms. And a lot of times the things that plagued you during puberty come back during menopause. I mean, a pimple has to do with menopause. Nobody told me that. I just only knew about my mother had hot flashes. She wore a patch on her leg. I didn't really understand what it did, didn't understand any of it. And I actually have a funny story about a hot flash. So like I said, I was really young for menopause, and my dad was in a nursing home. And one day I go there, and the day before I just had some procedure, and all of a sudden I had never felt heat like this. And I called in the nurse and I said, you have to take my temperature. And she said, I'm not allowed. You're not a patient. You have to take my temperature because I think I have to call the ambulance because I think I'm having a raging infection from that, injection in my back. And she takes my temperature and she says, it's 97.5. And I said, that's impossible. And she looked at me and she said, how old are you? Whatever I said at the time, 40. And she said, you're having a hot flash. I was like, what? And she was right.
And again, I think that's a key piece of information that is not told to us, because I always thought that you stop getting your period, you kind of get some of these symptoms, and after a year of not having your period, you're considered to be in menopause and then postmenopause.
Yep.
I started having, now that I look back, I started having my symptoms. Actually, I think I started having estrogen problems after I had my tubes done, after my second one. But I definitely started having hormonal changes at 39, 40.
Yep.
And even the doctors I would go to talk to and tell them, what I was going through, not one ever said it could be perimenopause. I didn't even know the word perimenopause until like a year ago.
Me too. I mean, for me, it's been a while, but I had never heard that either.
And what women don't understand is that your perimenopausal symptoms can start in your early 40s and they can last 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
So I started I'm like I said, 39, 40. I just turned 50. I'm also dealing with a whole bag of other stuff to do with my hormones, but I've been dealing with this for 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Including like insomnia for the better part of 4 years.
Gosh.
And it's,
Forgot
you
about
go
that.
and you talk to your doctors and it's like blank. They have no clue. They have no clue that this is all to do with hormones. And it's only through, talking with different experts through this podcast that I've been able to go back to my doctor and say, no, this is not right. This is not right. We need to deal with this.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, I think I got most of my information through my friends, right? But I was the first of my friends since it happened so early. So I was Googling, that was the only way that I knew what was going on. And then it wasn't as easy as you describe. I thought the same thing. Well, it'll just kind of taper off and then one day it'll stop. No, for me, it turned into hemorrhaging and procedures and all of that. And I thought my insides were dropping out. I mean, not to be disgusting, but I was scared out of my mind.
Yeah. And that's it, is that those pieces of information, I mean, no, we're not trying to be vulgar or gross or anything, but I mean, you talked about your innards falling out. I remember after I had my first, he was a C-section. And I went to the bathroom the next day and I literally thought my uterus was falling out of my body. I was panicking and I was hitting the call button.
Oh my gosh.
But it was actually like this, it was a massive blood clot.
Yeah. Yep.
Nobody had ever explained to me you could have blood clots after. Nobody.
Exactly.
And I'm like, it's not that we're trying to be gross, but if we don't have these conversations, if we don't talk about this stuff, then who is? How are you going to learn that, urinary tract infections are a hormonal problem? Blurry vision. You start noticing all the ladies are getting the
the
glasses
readers
from the dollar store.
Yep.
Well, that's not because our eyes are getting old. It's because our hormones are a problem. Like, chances are, if you're in your late 30s, early 40s, any symptom you're having, assume first that it has to do with hormones.
You're definitely true.
You're going to be much quicker off to deal with it than if you're trying to deal with just the symptom.
Definitely agree with that. And just, it's a long haul. It's a long haul thing. So be prepared.
It is, but it's something that I think if we deal with it as a community of women.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's been one of the pitfalls. If you go back, not in recent history, but more in ancient history, we were more tribal in how we lived. So you had your elders, you had, younger people you could mentor, you could share, you could, talk about these things.
Exactly. Definitely true. I mean, I would ask my mother some questions, but she would either not remember or, quite honestly, her generation, it was kind of like, we don't really talk about these things.
Yeah. It still is in a lot of ways a taboo subject. Now, my mom, she had a hysterectomy when she was like, I think 42.
Okay.
So, and then she started going through, I mean, they didn't take her ovaries, they only took her uterus, but she
Okay.
still started going through menopause, and her hormones were well out of balance.
Yeah.
So I could see, like, I saw how erratic her behavior was. And I think I watched an Oprah show one day when they were talking about it. And I said to my mom, I said, you got to go on hormones, because this is clearly what's going on with you.
Yes.
But I mean, outside of that, she didn't really have, I mean, I can remember seeing her have hot flashes, but she went on hormone replacement, and that was the end of it for her.
Yeah. I think my mother as well.
But I mean, and I don't know why I'm seeing more and more women having multiple symptoms and problems that are getting worse than they were before. And that probably has a lot to do with, our stress levels and the amount of chemicals and toxicity that our bodies are facing and all of that good stuff. But
Oh yeah.
there's so many things that we need to share as women. Now,
So true.
as we wrap up today, Debbie, did you have any final words of wisdom?
Well, I would say that for my whole life, I was a woman without a quote. I used to be not annoyed, but like admire people who lived by a quote, or a quote that meant something to them. And through this process, a quote that we kind of all know all of a sudden took on a different meaning. And it's from Glinda the Good Witch. And she said, "You have always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it for yourself." And if you really think about that, we all have it within us to do whatever we want, regardless of your circumstances. So
Oh, I
that's my
love that
message.
one. I love that one. And I can remember her saying it.
Yep. You're like, really? I went through all of this with the yellow brick road and the witch, and I could have gone home myself in the
Like,
beginning.
damn, that yellow brick road has been some long getting here. Oh, beautiful message, Debbie. I love that.
Thank you.
Now, my goal for the roller coaster of midlife is to empower women like you to thrive in this amazing chapter of our lives. So go on, embrace the adventure, and start rocking midlife like the badass that you are. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Our greatest power is in our community. And don't forget to visit my website at therollercoasterpodcast.com and click on Start Here. This is where you can get your free audio course, 3 steps to go from hot mess to badass and start rocking midlife. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, keep riding the roller coaster and embracing the adventure of midlife. Thank you to all of my listeners. And Debbie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was just a wonderful conversation.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creator.